Cycle Drag Universe, do we have a treat for you today? Kick those feet up because this is a rare gem. I am joined with my good buddy Brady Ingalls from Retro Speed. Thank you for being here, Brady. Brady, we've got some history with this bike. Viewers will remember you being just an astute expert. You were looking at one hot and heavy out in Mecum. Unfortunately, there was a little bit of a problem with the motorcycle, so we found this one 100% legit, 100% authentic. Looking back at this crazy year where you have gone on this search to find the rare Z2, what's your impression of this bike?
Absolutely fantastic. It's rare to see any Z2 in the US, but in this condition, with all the right stamped codes, we're blessed to have it here.
Very, very cool. This is a 1975, and let's back up for a second for those of you who do not know the story, because a lot of you might look at first glance and say, that's a Z1 900. That's a KZ750. No, it's not. The KZ750 would come later in the States. This one available not only in Japan, it was available a couple other places from what we're hearing, but Japan was what it was designed for. And the reason was you could not sell a motorcycle over 750 cc's at Japan in that time period. And I think that's just another chapter in the major rivalry between Honda and Kawasaki. We knew the CB750 was red hot over there. As I was telling you before, a little bit of a story that we heard at Mecum might have had to do with Honda having a little more influence, a little more stroke in Japan at the time, keeping the Z1 900 out, but certainly huge rivalry between these two, right?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. A rivalry that has benefited all us consumers. They were at each other's throats to produce the best motorcycle. And I'm sure a lot of people counted Kawasaki out. The CB750 was a wonderful platform, but this is so much further ahead, no doubt.
Certainly is, and what I talk about too, a lot of people that watch this platform, especially my drag racing friends, experts on the Z1, but it's just amazing how many people have never seen one of these in person. I'm one of them. I mean, I've seen enough Z1s that I love them. I'm very comfortable with them. When I heard there was going to be a Z2 at Mecum, it's the first time I ever saw one in person. Let me ask you this, because based on the problem that we saw in that motorcycle that does happen, how do you ensure a bike like this is authentic when so little is known about it?
You know, very difficult to do. Luckily, the Z1 and the Z2 shared some stamp codes, so there's a ton of information about the Z1. You can take that information and apply it to the Z2, but no doubt, it's very, very difficult. I've been in business 18 years restoring and repairing Japanese motorcycles. I've never had a Z2 through my shop. We go through about 1,000 bikes a year. They're rare.
And you know, one thing I want to say too, following up on our story from Mecum, is that bike very well could have been authentic. And I hope I left that impression. We just didn't know. There was a problem with the VIN where a grinder hit the VIN, and then all of a sudden we had all these questions. But one thing I want to follow up on, because done a lot of research, got a lot of emails, got a lot of calls since that video went out, and I want to be perfectly fair. And if we could please step in here, I want to show you something that, this was a question at Mecum. It was on the engine tag right here. And one of the gentlemen questioned the lip right here on the numbers of the engine. And he said, hey, that's not on a 74 Z1 900, shouldn't be on a 74 Z2. Well, here's what I found out. I talked to somebody who worked at Kawasaki for 30 years, and they corrected me and said that very well could exist on a Z2 because it was a production change mid 74. Now that's where I just got to laugh and smile, because I'm like, where do you find this information? Luckily, I know one guy who worked at Kawasaki and knew about that. Who else is going to know about a production change in mid 74? That's just some of the nuances of these bikes that are crazy.
And that was a great thing that the Mecum auction brought out. Prior to that, there wasn't much stir about the Z2s because you never run into them. After the auction and all that happened, and some of the numbers that got thrown around at that auction, a couple did surface, and a couple surfaced in very stock form. Very rough shape, but very untouched. And there was multiple Z2s with raised edges around that. I believe that edge was put on there so it would be far more difficult to counterfeit, to take those numbers off. And I think it works well.
Well, another thing from that video that, again, just gives me so much respect for the experts, the aficionados, the people that are really in the know, is we walked over to a 74 Z1 900 and it was smooth. And then we walked over to this and it wasn't. So, of course, that's going to raise a question.
Sure.
But who knows about that production change, like I said, and how often does that happen with the OEMs, and why does that happen, and when does it happen? Just very, very tough to get information on this bike. That's one of the reasons why it's so special. We believe about 30 or so in the United States. Have you heard any type of numbers?
That is the numbers that I've been hearing, and it sounds believable. They were produced in lower numbers than the Z1, and so you can't imagine many came over here. Servicemen you often talk about, and that makes perfect sense. You're stationed in Japan and you want a motorcycle. But other than that, for the past couple of years, when the collector market has really gone up on the Z2, a couple might be coming back, but numbers are very low.
Another thing that I found out in my research is this just simply wasn't a motorcycle with less displacement. Kawasaki engineers really went to work. They took it as a challenge. They wanted to make this bike perform like the Z1 900, even though it was down on CCs. So what we ended up getting was different pistons, a different crankshaft design, I believe. I believe you know a little bit more about that than me. Why don't you tell me what you know?
Yes, the stroke was changed on this, which is just a portrait of Japanese engineering. Some other companies would have took a X-size piston, went smaller, called it a 750, and went with it. Not the case with Japanese engineering. They changed the carburetors, the final drive ratio, the bore and stroke, all to properly suit the 750.
It is truly amazing. I just wish these motorcycles could talk sometimes. I wish that one in Mecum could talk, right? Because it's like it got everybody's attention. It's like buying a fine piece of jewelry where it could be authentic, but if there's any type of question at all, I kind of gave you the example of a baseball card. Maybe we got a Mickey Mantle or Roberto Clemente that's 100% authentic, but there's a corner off, and somehow along the lines in the last 40, 50 years, it's been altered. From your experience, because I know you're an expert with retro speed and everything, when you run into a situation like that, how do you assess it? How do you vet it? Because it's almost like Greg from Mecum told us in his defense, these things are 40, 50 years old. We can't speak for every single person that's owned it. And maybe there are some changes, but maybe at the end of the day, you still have something that is pretty darn original and close and survived. When a bike is not perfect, how do you evaluate it?
I think the important thing is that you disclose it. It's all about that corner of the card. Yeah. Bring it out front and center, disclose everything, and everything will work out great.
I agree, and some guys are probably afraid to do that because you are going to take a hit in value, but boy, if something comes out that you didn't disclose, then the values are going to go like this, like we saw. But an awesome bike, and what I understand, and I want to thank these guys from the Throttlestop Collection because they're awesome and I absolutely love them. This isn't just a showpiece. We're going to fire this bike up.
Sounds great.
Sounds great is the key word. As promised, we got a very special treat for you. I've never heard one of these run, and Brady, you're going to bring it to life. So let's hear this beauty. Gas on. Oh yeah. Well, I'll tell you this, Brady, I don't know how you feel, but I feel like whether it's a Z1 or a Z2, it still sounds awesome.
Absolutely, absolutely, fantastic.
Well, thank you so much, partner. I really appreciate it. How about that, guys? Tell people you have heard something perhaps you have never heard before. I know I've never heard it before. A running Kawasaki Z2.